Dr. Bano Murtuja specializes in community engagement and social care and completed her PhD at the University of Leeds. Hailing from Blackburn, UK, she currently lives in Mississauga, Canada, where she is the Managing Director of Seekers Hub, a unique learning foundation that connects transformative knowledge and spirituality with actionable community service and social engagement. She previously set up and run 2 businesses called Vis-a-Vis, a research consultancy, and ILM, the Institute of Learning and Mentoring, an organization for school children mainly from Muslim backgrounds. And now I will call on Dr. Bano to tell us about the ethics of education.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of God, the Beneficent and the Merciful, all praise is due to Him for allowing us to gather here today and benefit from this gathering, inshallah. May the praise and blessings of Allah be on the Prophet, his noble emissary, the shining light, and the seal of prophethood, his companions, family, and all of his followers. I was actually asked to speak about the ethics of education and community development, and so it's with that that I've put together a few pointers. I'm very conscious that time is running against us, particularly considering Maghrib is coming in. I did ask the Sheikh for us to call the adhan halfway through my speech, so I would be cut short, but I don't think he's going to do that, so I may have to keep it short myself. The ethics of education and community development is a vast topic, and so I'm going to focus on 3 central dimensions, taking from my own experiences and also from the guidance and knowledge that I've gained from my teachers, inshallah. In particular, I'm going to focus on 3 dimensions, one relating to the individual, one relating to the process of community development, and one relating to the community itself. Education, we live in a society and we live in a time where education is considered to be central. Often from the time that a child is born, emphasis is placed on what we teach the child, how we teach the child, the information that we convey to him or her, which school they go to, who their teachers are, what their teachers' qualifications are, how educated their parents are, and the list goes on. We very rarely, however, distinguish between the difference between information that we put into the brains of our children and what actually constitutes knowledge. Our children, particularly in some societies, are taught to regurgitate. They're taught to sit and, as long as they can follow a certain process of mathematics, that's okay, but let's not actually get them to understand why geometry is geometry and how it relates to the universe, and all of those sorts of connections. Imam Ghazali, in his Ihya al-Ulumuddin, talks about the importance of knowledge, but makes the distinction between knowledge and beneficial knowledge, and talks of the fact that every piece of knowledge, every dimension of knowledge that you have acts as a witness, either as a witness for you or as a witness against you. Now, considering we're at university, each and every single one of us here will have gained some level of formal education, whether it's in economics, whether it's in finance, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in drama, whether it's in how to do your nails really nicely. But we will have gone to university to study something. The question is, how do we put that knowledge to good use? How do we make that knowledge beneficial? And as young people, deciding on where the paths of your lives are going to take you, that should be one of the central questions that you have. If you talk about the ethics of education and community development, then one of the central principles that we should be following is that your knowledge should be in the service of others. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter whether your knowledge is on how to make your nails look good. If you've gone to university to do a beautician's course, if that is what you have gone to study, there are ways and means to make that beneficial to people, for people who have, you know, and for those of you who will have watched the Oscars, for those of us who have had, for those women in our world who have had acid thrown on their face, to have somebody make them feel that that's okay, to have somebody make them feel that they are able to continue to function in society is an incredible way of making your knowledge serve others. So the question that we as individuals have to ask ourselves when we look at the ethics of education and community development is, what knowledge do I have and how do I put it into the service of others? And if you can make your knowledge serviceable, you make it beneficial. And if you make it beneficial, you make it act as a witness for you, as opposed to a witness against you, inshallah. This is also really the point at which the community development begins, and also how it flourishes. The second dimension that I wanted to look at was the process itself. Now, often when we look at community development and we look at activists, and a number of us in this room will probably consider ourselves activists, activists have a certain arrogance about them that nobody else really does. They walk around thinking that they can change the world. Most activists will at some point or another dream of a cape. The difficulty that you have, and what experience in activism will eventually lead you to, is the realization that both the process of learning and knowledge gathering should be in the hands of the community itself. It is not for the activist to be imparting their knowledge upon the community and somehow developing them from the outside in. Community development occurs from within, and that goes on to my third point, so I'll wait before I move on to that. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when he taught the companions, didn't simply give them information, but equipped them to be able to take their own communities forward. And it is because the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, equipped communities, equipped individuals to be able to take that knowledge and develop their own communities, that it was after the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, passed from this life, that Islam spread in the way that it did, as rapidly as it did, with the companions going to all corners of the world, developing communities, because they were equipped with knowledge. And I'm going to give you a really quick example here of some of my own work as to how, well, as to how this works. In the UK, we have a political party called the British National Party, which is a right-wing party that believes that everybody of ethnicity should be repatriated. Basically, Britain should be for white people, although they don't come out and say that because they're a legitimate political party. In the town that I am from, we are almost 30 to 32% of either Pakistani or Indian descent, and it's one of the largest congregations of South Asian communities in Britain, or concentrations, excuse me. And there is also a massive drugs problem. Now, one of the problems that we were having in our community was that all the Muslims were blaming all the non-Muslims and saying they're the ones that bring drugs into our family, into our communities, to our children. All the white people were saying it's the Asians, they bring all the drugs in. And nobody was getting anywhere. And what it was resulting in was a huge amount of gang warfare and killing. Well, not real killing, because that kind of makes me sound like I'm from the Bronx, but I'm not. But it was, you know, there was fights and stuff. Anyways, so one of the things that we did is we ran something called a community jury, where we put the issue of drugs on trial. And we bought members of the BNP members of the white socioeconomically deprived community, members of the South Asian socioeconomically deprived community, ex-drug addicts, all around a table. And for the process of 12 to 14 weeks, we brought different witnesses that talked to the different dimensions of drugs, whether it be I was an ex-addict, well, I am an ex-addict, or I used to be a dealer, or I'm a headmaster in a school, or I'm a kid that's been offered drugs. These witnesses were questioned, cross-examined by the people that were in and around the table. And eventually, from the first week of literally the white side of the room, and the brown side of the room, and then the women's side of the room and the men's side of the room, we went to it becoming our problem, as opposed to their problem that they bring into our community. How did this happen? This happened because the people around that table were given the opportunity not only to ask the questions, but to decide what kind of knowledge that they were going to take. They were given the opportunity not just to be given information passively, but to actively engage with it. And so the process of community development, and us as ethical educators and activists, have to ensure that we don't believe that we can simply go in and fix other people's problems for them, but that they take ownership of that, and that they are given the necessary tools that are required for them to be able to gain the knowledge to make those changes. Now, how does this fit in with the teachings of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him? I was sat sort of thinking about, okay, so where am I looking at the ethics of this? And there was no better example for me than Hadith Jibreel. One of the core hadith that we are used, the hadith that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, described as being the teaching that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, described as being the teaching that was sent to complete your faith, was the Hadith Jibreel. When Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came and spoke to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in front of the companions, but did so through the means of questions. Tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, responded. And then when he turned to the companions, it wasn't to tell them what they should have learned. It was to question them about what they did learn. So really, if you're looking at education, if you're looking at ethics, and if you're looking at community development, we're given it all in the example that was set. Make sure you distinguish between information and knowledge. Make sure you equip people and facilitate them to be able to gain that knowledge for themselves, so that it is sustainable and so that they can take it forward. And make sure that you, in your own activities, put the cape away and recognize that he was only sent to perfect noble character, and have the humility to know that you are nothing but a facilitator. Jazakallah khairan.